So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this webinar, where we're going to discuss the social impact of urban regeneration in Southern Europe, which is seen by the participants in the speakers panel as a recovery tool with a high social impact. And we will seek in the sessions this morning to address and display and demonstrate why urban regeneration has a high social impact. If I could ask the speakers to maybe now, after our practice session, to turn off their cameras. And I don't know if the organizers have an introductory slide to display for the audience. But before we come to the first interaction with the audience, I wanted to very quickly set the context for our event this morning. We all know how much we have suffered over the past year and a half with the COVID pandemic. We're suffering high energy prices at the moment, and a great deal of EU policy is being revised in the buildings space. In the context of those revisions at European level, we've learned that the renovation of buildings is one of the key actions that can be taken at national and local level in order to stimulate our economies and lift us out of the current economic crisis. But in publicizing those legislative proposals, we hear very important phrases like leaving no one behind, like addressing worst performing sector first, like creating an enabling framework because laws and regulations are not enough, putting energy efficiency first, going deep with our renovation activities, and maybe most importantly of all, improving quality of life for all citizens. So here in Brussels, where I sit, I believe that the European Commission has been courageous in putting forward the proposals that it has put forward and that it will put forward later. And in that context, I think the webinar today is really a timely moment for us to take stock of what's happening on the ground through some European projects and through some of the most promising financing models that are available for neighborhood regeneration. So in that context, and I will introduce each speaker as we go through the morning, but I would like to first start with a poll, and we have decided to use Slido, and the Slido email address, web address for you to sign on is about to be put in the chat box by our organizers, and you may already have it installed on your mobile phone. So our first question, so the code for this morning's event on the Slido application is urban regeneration. So let me just, so it's Slido. If you're going on your browser, it's slido.com, and the code is urban regeneration. So Patricia, could you launch the first poll, please? We should see it normally on screen if the interaction works. Maybe as that is being launched, I would just remind the audience that there is a chat function that I've just typed into where you can post questions.
Yes, the first question is active.
Okay. But we don't see it then, Patricia, on screen. So let me, So the first question for those who can't see it is where we would like to know who's in the audience. So who is in the room is the first question. Patricia, do you have it open? Could you share a screen or will I share my screen? Because I have it open. Okay. On my browser, it looks like this. Thank you. We have 8 people who have answered. And what we're seeing is that it's mainly others, so non-industry or public body persons that are with us on the call. I will maybe wait another moment to see if more people have managed to get on board. Yes, Clemence has asked, can I put the link in the chat, please? And it's there at the top, slido.com. At the top of the chat, you should see it. I only sent it to the hosts, excuse me. To everyone. Sorry, Clemence, I had only sent it to the hosts and talkers. And the code is, thank you. And as I said, the code is urban regeneration in one word with a capital U and a capital R. Great. Given the restrictions we have on time, I see 9 people have answered. You're mainly from others, so researchers and consultants. 22% from industry and just 11% from public bodies or civil society. That's just changed as I spoke, but there you go. Okay, people are getting on. Okay. Patricia, I think we should move to the next question. We've had 12 responses there, and great to see that it's, for me, not my usual audience of industry and public bodies. So interesting. But we do have a second question. We wanted to get your sentiment on this very important question. And the question here is, why would you not renovate your home? And it's a word cloud. So please add one word or maybe 2 words to the box and hit send, and we will see it begin to come up on my screen. I think I have to put in a word in order for you to see it. Okay. We've had 8 answers, all unique so far. 2 expensive and expensive has turned up twice, and money has turned up. So cost of works, high prices. So it looks like the main disincentive is around the financial aspects of renovation. Although in the word cloud, as you see, cumbersome processes shows up as the largest, and I'm not sure why. And thank you so much for participating actively. Yeah. Okay, I think we're at about the number of answers we're going to get, and very revealing. I personally had not expected that the financial side would be so prevalent in your answers. Okay, time then to move on to listen to our keynote speaker. And to give us the keynote speech this morning, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Julien Dijol from Housing Europe. He is a social and political scientist and works as head of policy at Housing Europe. Julien, over to you. I gather you're going to share some slides with us as well. You have 10 minutes, max.
Yes. Thank you, Adrian. So yes, indeed, I will share the screen. So here we go. Do not hesitate to interrupt me if there's something wrong in the presentation. So yes, what I wanted to do this morning is to have a bit of conversation about how we can move towards something which is sustainable and socially inclusive when we talk about renovation and regeneration. And what we're going to see is, of course, the essential role of public social housing. And so my points will be quite general, and I will talk about countries which not necessarily from Southern Europe, but I hope that during the discussion after my presentation and throughout the meeting, we will have the opportunity to try to compare what works and what doesn't work in Southern Europe, European countries in comparison with other countries. So yes, briefly, I will in next now 8 minutes, we'll talk about general trends about energy efficiency in housing, social housing, how the social housing could lead the way in the fair energy transition, and the role of the recovery and resilience funds, and a final word about an important initiative which might be really a way through towards inclusiveness and sustainability for urban regeneration, including in Southern Europe. So this is an interesting graph from a French report recently published. Unfortunately, there's no Southern European countries in this comparison, but it would be good to discuss about the trends in Southern Europe after that. It shows the energy consumption per square meter related to heating in some chosen countries from France, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, and in the UK. And what we can see from the 90s is a decrease of the energy consumption per square meter. And this is the rather good news in a way. So, I mean, the energy transition that we are talking about is already underway. It's something that is happening already for many years. And you can see that there's one country which is a bit outside of this group, which is Sweden. This is the darkest line at the bottom. And this is an interesting point. We will talk about that. How has Sweden managed to be, in a way, so good and so decarbonized? And this is the same in another graph, which talks about the CO2 emitted per square meter, not the energy consumption or kilowatt hour, but the CO2 emitted. And the same, so Sweden is extremely well positioned. And how did they manage that? It's a very important thing that we need to know. I mean, the answer is that they managed to do it by combining different policy measures from, on the one hand, for instance, energy efficiency measures in the building, but also the decarbonization of heat through, well, imposing a carbon tax in the 90s, and a big and important investment in district heating, which is one of the answers that certainly, when we ask the question about how we're going to get there, district heating probably is one of the answers. So the result is that Sweden is now as a almost completely decarbonized building stock. And so this is a lesson that we need to really look at in particular when we're also in Southern Europe. A point about Southern Europe is that we know that there are specific issues related to lack of skills or a lack of training at all levels, including the public authorities, but also from the supply chain perspective. Not talking about the climate zone issue and the fact that we do not have the same heat needs or heating needs there and in the continental or Northern Europe. But it's an important, I think, conversation to have and to compare the different countries and to see what we could do at Southern European level. And the Swedish success could, I think, be replicable, mixing the different aspects of decarbonization of heat and energy efficiency measures. Well, this was, again, sorry, it's not supposed to be a language course today, but this is in German. It shows at the end of this graph on the right side, the stagnation of the reduction of the energy consumption per square meter in Germany since the let's say, turn of 2011, 2012. So what happened in Germany? And actually, what happened is a very important thing, is what we call the behavioral aspect and the so-called rebound effect, which is a reality. And This is something that we also need to tackle when we discuss about urban regeneration, including at Southern European level. This question of the behavioral aspect, how you're going to engage with people, how are you going to explain them with the new measures in relation to renovation, the new equipment. This is very crucial. And despite being very good in general about CO2 emission per capita, Germany has seen in housing sector, including social housing sector, has seen some limitation because at some point we need to talk to people, and the social housing sector is very well placed to do that. I'm going to talk about this now. Why is social housing necessary and public housing necessary for the green transition and decarbonization? Is because social housing providers are the only one that are able to deliver on the systemic approach. So I'm in the district approach, systemic being looking at the different elements from behavioral to the question of the decarbonization of heat. The district approach means that you're going to look at the neighborhood and you want to regenerate neighborhoods, not only single buildings and neighborhoods. I mean, the definition can vary, but the point is that you go beyond the simple building level. So you touch the public spaces and you're going to discuss with tenants about how they want this to happen. And at the end, it will turn this into a socially sustainable approach. So the experience of the deployment of passive houses and eco-districts show that without proper involvement and co-creation with the residents, as well as user-friendly and approach, the expected results will not materialize because of, indeed, rebound effect, dissatisfaction, unintended negative consequences. So we need this district approach. And here some very brief examples of how we can do that. In Germany, on the left side, again, to come back to Germany, they managed to combine the renovation of homes with the greening of district heating. And they arrived to a very interesting situation where the rent has not increased so much and that the CO2 emissions has been reduced in the best way possible, but not necessarily reaching the maximum insulation, but a combination between optimal insulation and greening of the district heating. On the right side, you have an example from Bordeaux, a bit closer to Southern Europe, where they managed to install PV on the top of a brandly renovated social housing building. This PV has been used to self-consume for self-consumption purposes. So basically, they're going to use that to to cover the electricity needs of the common spaces, but also the electricity needs of the tenants. This is indeed something now permitted under the Renewable Energy Directive. An example from Sweden, and sorry, we go very in the north, but in Sweden, they really managed to turn a no-go area from, I think this is in Gothenburg, a no-go area into something where people are proud to live in because of thanks to the renovation. So the renovation of public buildings has managed to turn the neighborhood into something livable. So we really have urban regeneration and the social impact thanks to the role of public housing as a driver, and because public housing is really looking at the different aspects, not only the single building. This is a brief mention of the ambition that Housing Europe, the social housing movement in Europe has to renovate 4 million homes by 2030. And to do that, we need, adapted framework, but we also need innovation. We also need innovation and the role of exchanging good practices as we're going to do today, is very crucial. For instance, social housing organization in Europe, they are leading in innovations on many areas. We are doing open innovation testbed for facades, buildings as material banks for greater circularity, improving interface between the different management system and residents, the factory build renovation components, of course, and digital tools for renovation. We also talk about contributing to positive energy districts. And you have some reference if you want to know more. Briefly about the resilience and recovery facility, they are really a key aspect and something that Southern Europe can really use. I put in some figures you can find that Italy, and we're going to talk about it later on, Italy, France, but also Greece have some money to spend under the recovery plan for the renovation of housing. So we hope that will be used in the best way possible, which is integrated, urban related. We have examples again, which leads to the adaptation of the buildings, not only the renovation, but the adaptation. And this is also part of the urban regeneration. When you live in Italy, you want to have anti-seismic interventions in the building sector, in the urban environment. This is very important that we can finance that, and this is possible under the recovery plan. Overall, from the recovery plan, more than €5 billion will be spent on renovation and urban regeneration. So this is something that we will look at carefully. We hope that will turn into socially accepted urban regeneration. You have plenty of examples here. I'm not going into the detail. And, oh, sorry, I see that. Yeah, and the last one is about the Affordable Housing Initiative, which is an important initiative because for the first time, the Commission is really aware of the importance of having district renovation. And with this initiative, the Commission expects to have 100 districts renovated by 2025, lighthouse district, as they call it. So intervention that will go the extra mile, that will combine different aspects, including, of course, the affordability aspect, which is crucial. So I put a bit of information on a recent call for proposal that we actually we submitted a bid for that, and that will be very important because it will steer the affordable housing initiative, and we hope that we'll be able to cover as many as Southern European neighborhoods as possible under this initiative. So I think I'm stopping here. Sorry, I was a bit over the time, and over to you, Adrian.
Thank you so much, Julian, for that great overview of the keynote speech. You said some very important things and made convincing arguments that indeed social housing is key to the green transition, something I think I would agree with. It's always been a front-runner segment of the building stock. And I just have to say that on the analysis of the recovery plans, E3G has just carried out an in-depth study on the full place of renovation. And in fact, the total amount in 18 countries that's dedicated to renovation in general, not just social housing, is very close to 40 billion euro, 40 billion euro. So indeed, it's a great opportunity. So apparently I can't be heard very well. Okay, I'll just hold my microphone closer to my mouth. I'm now delighted to move on to our first session. Julian, thank you for setting the tone so competently. And I'm delighted to invite Andoni Hidalgo, who is International Affairs Advisor for the Basque Urban Agenda and part of the JRC's expert group Urban 2030, to give us his presentation, which will speak about a project known as Opengela, which has successfully rolled out one-stop shops in the Basque region. Andoni, over to you to share your screen, and about 7 minutes max. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, perfectly. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go over the presentation of the Opengela project, which is a project running from May 2019, funded by H2020, and it's been going on mainly in the only in the Basque region, with 2 pilot projects being developed in 2 municipalities, Bilbao and Eibar. And I'm going to go further than that. I'm going to pick up from some of the things that Adrian just said now, and Julien as well, and insist on some very key elements that I think this project is teaching us on how to increase the social impact of urban regeneration projects and on building renovation projects. So let's go. The first 2 things that can be said about this project is that it doesn't start from scratch. It's a fruit of full and very detailed diagnosis of the state of a building stock in the region. And that was done by the Basque Government in 2 steps. The first diagnosis was made in 2012. And then there was this renewed diagnosis being published in 2019. And there, what was done was identifying which areas of the region were could be qualified as vulnerable or very vulnerable, based on some indicators such as, not only building stock status, but as well some other very social elements such as unemployment, revenue, age, rate of dependency of a population, because as in many other parts of Europe, we have a problem of a very high aging population. And this based on this status, and prior to the development to the proposal of this project, there were two other things happening, which in my view were very important. So not only making an analysis of how the building stock was and which were the areas that needed intervention, I insist from a very social perspective. There were two strategies being developed at the regional level. The first of them was the urban agenda for the Basque Country, which actually established a picture of where our cities were and where cities need to be in the year 2050, and which are the needed elements that we need to put into action in order to have sustainable cities as a whole. But this came hand in hand with the development of a regional strategy on sustainable development goals, which were adopted in 2018, and which set the ground for this methodology of analysis. And very importantly, it set the ground for looking at the public policies in a holistic way. This is the public actions that I undertake as a government in the environmental sector has tremendous and very deep implications in some other areas, such as social perspective, such as gender equality, such as the treatment of the end of poverty, the reduction of inequalities, etc., etc. And the sustainable development goals were used as a tool, as a management tool, in order to really qualify the public policies in what regards the intervention in the building stock, and have a holistic view, a vue d'ensemble, and on what will be the implications of the measures being undertaken. After this, and I will come back to this in the conclusions on the importance of having really regional strategies that set the ground. The project was launched, as I said, in 2019, with two pilot projects being developed in Bilbao and Eibar. And what was done was opening two district offices being set up in Eibar and Bilbao. And Bilbao, as I said, we used the funds to employ 2 to 3 people in each of the offices, and in order to help the building owners in their building renovation way, providing them, as you can see down in the slide, technical advice on social matters, ensuring, a smooth contact, and doing regular meetings. As well, we had administrative staff to take care of one of the elements that was actually underlined in the word cloud before was why would I not renovate my home? Because there's a cumbersome process, and that was, I think, the one that got more kicks. So this is very important to give the neighbors the assistance by setting up an open office in their neighborhood, which is being renovated, where they can go and meet people and resolve the technical matters that they might be have doubts with. As well, advising legal affairs, and last but not least, very importantly as well, it has been underlined, financing advice. But the real important thing that we had when it came to social impact was that these Opengelas, these open offices, district offices, are offering a non-institutional space to neighbors to get in touch really with the people undertaking the works. And as well, there were a social and knowledge hub, because training seminars and training for the workforce has been developed as well in those rooms. And a priority has been given within the wards for the contracting of companies that could actually offer some employment possibilities to people living in the neighborhood. So grassroots-based district offices are a key element, and we've seen that it really pays off, and the neighbors can really see what is happening in the neighborhoods and can feel confident. Trust is a key element here. So, but this project is going to be developed in 2 steps. First, validation in 2 pilot projects, and then replication at the regional scale. We have as well some other projects that have kick-started in some other municipalities in the Basque region, and we have a waiting list of other municipalities that are willing to join the project. Now, what happens? 2020 came, coronavirus, lockdown, etc. Some interesting initiatives, as Julian has mentioned before, Renovation Wave, the Affordable Housing Initiative, and as well the Next Generation funds. In here, that for the building regeneration in the region, that came as a very effective to joining the regional government's programs on building regeneration, and obviously this was accelerated by the presence of European funds, and now we are seeing that this is blossoming all over the region. Nevertheless, there's 3 things that I could underline here. First of all, we are finding that we have high construction material prices, and this is hindering some of the projects. So this is something that I don't know if it happens in some other parts of Europe, but it will be interesting to hear. The second element that we are noticing is a lack of skilled workforce, which is obviously a very important element that needs to be taken into consideration. But for that, the establishment of really ambitious training strategies will be key. And then as well, the third thing that we are seeing is that next generation regulations come very much focusing on energy efficiency, which is right, but as well we see missing the accessibility part. So this is something that we are experiencing as the project goes by, and I think it was relevant to point it out. Now, to end up, this is my last slide. I'm going to quickly go over the 5 key messages that we have learned over the way. First is that we, as Julian said, we have to get away from buildings, enlarge the perspective from buildings to neighborhoods. Okay, integral urban regeneration, and for that, government strategies, which are as well integral, are key. Taking as well a territorial perspective, not just focusing on some neighborhoods, but as well looking beyond and taking a territorial approach. Governance, obviously, and the leading role of the regional government has been key, because we see some municipalities willing to join the project or willing to join the process if they see that this has been coordinated or is being coordinated by the regional government. That gives trust and confidence about the solidity of the actions undertaken. Well, the other 2 last points I've already told them, providing trust to citizens as well. Change of scope in financial markets, that will be underlined in the second part of this debate, but I think I have already made the point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. The Opengela looks like a really good model and is having, I understand, impact already in the 2 pilot projects. And indeed, the challenges of the COVID pandemic, it's been good to hear from the ground how difficult that has been. And I would confirm for you that high construction prices and lack of skilled workforce is generalized across the EU at the present time. So for the audience, we have the opportunity to have a debate, but before that, we have 3 more projects to hear from. And I'm hoping that my speakers can do each of those presentations in about 7 minutes. And our next presenter is going to be Patricia Molina. Patricia leads the Urban Transformation Lab at Catalonia, and the lab works, I understand, mainly with public authorities. So Patricia, over to you for a challenging 6-minute presentation.
Okay, I will do my best. Thank you very much, Adrian. So I'm going to be presenting the AGREE project, which is also happening in the Basque region. also led by the Basque Government, by the Department of Housing. And AGREE stands for Aggregation and Improved Governance for Untapping Residential Energy Efficiency Potential in the Basque Country. It's a 3 years project. And as you can see, it's led by the Basque Government. We have 3 municipalities, Tecnalia as a research organization behind it, and EuroPACE, which is the environmental agency in the Basque region. So really what we focus on here is building on what other speakers have already said, is this private residential building challenge to renovate, especially in the Southern Europe. And we see that we are not offering adequate investment schemes. There is a gap between residents' needs and the design of grants and loans. Energy efficiency, it's not necessarily the main trigger for renovation. So we need to have an integrated view, which brings other benefits to residents when we are trying to convince for renovation. There is this complexity of management and governance structures where we have the local governments, regional governments, financial entities, many stakeholders that need to be organized. And then we also see demand fragmentation. Yes?
Can I interrupt you? You need to move your slides forward.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm with two screens and this is a challenge, sorry. Okay. So as I was saying, this is not, we also find demand aggregation, demand fragmentation. So what AGREE, the focus is in actually triggering investment in the energy renovation of private residential building complexes through design, deployment, and dissemination of innovative and replicable mechanisms for demand activation and aggregation, also with the neighborhood view more than the individual building view, specific financing solutions, and of course, improved governance, which here especially means multi-level coordination between regional government and local governments, which are called to have a very important role in these processes. So we are, of course, offering this integrated approach to renovation, including energy efficiencies, but also habitability and most importantly, accessibility issues, and lowering costs by aggregating demand for buildings that are of a very similar type, and we will see this in the analysis later. Also, we need to understand the demand, who is there, what are their needs in terms of social and economic aspects, and then design subsidies and loans that are tailored to them. And also improve the government's guaranteeing that all stakeholders are involved in the design of the process. Otherwise, we won't be able to actually convince the private residential owners who are in this kind of typology the majority. So in particular, we are trying to trigger 8.5 million of investment in energy efficiency renovation in private multifamily residential building states in the Basque Country. This is the way we are organizing. We are, of course, first assessing what are the most suited areas to actually try to trigger these investments, which are not necessarily always there are a combination of needs and also feasibility, of course, because we want this to be happening in some short time. We need to facilitate with particular mechanisms, and then we need to design and implement action plans with stakeholders. So we are focusing on these 3 cities in the Basque Country: Basauri, Vitoria, Gasteiz, and Donosti San Sebastian. This is the kind of building states I'm referring to, where they are privately owned, more than 3 floors, without elevators, without thermal conditions. So first of all, we needed to choose where to start these pilots. These pilots aim to be inspiring for other areas of the city. So we need to make sure they are sufficiently adequate for the project. So we first analyzed where this kind of buildings built between the 50s and the 70s with 3 or more floors and with homogeneous typology. We looked at them. Then we agreed on a methodology on how we're going to prioritize. We are looking at rent, we're looking at aging population, we are looking at accessibility, and we're looking at the energy efficiency and the condition of the buildings, all combined in indexes at the census tract scale. So we could actually choose where we're going to work. Then when we had already defined which were the buildings, we went into building scale indicators with more detailed information coming from the municipality. The others were all data sets that are at the regional and national level, but here we could use more detailed kind of information. So we looked at all these indicators: social aging and overaging, more than 74 ages, elevator, both aging and accessibility, how was the building status, how was the housing tenure, where there empty housing, which houses were receiving subsidies, etc. We organized and we co-defined local action plans with all 3 municipalities and stakeholders, where of course participation and communication from the neighbors and residents was key from the beginning. We defined this engagement strategy where we were focusing on management models, institutional coordination, neighborhood participation. We defined a governance structure for the whole process, and we defined the need to have an in-place neighborhood office in case of bigger cities such as Vitoria and San Sebastian. Of course, we are now in the phase of holding many meetings with neighborhood associations, owners, building managers, explaining the grants and loans that are available, already existing and ready to be used, which have not been enough used because our analysis is there was not this accompanying, not this process where building owners were actually receiving enough information and support for the process. And this is it. Thank you very much.
I almost regret asking you to be quick, Patricia, because that's a very interesting project. And indeed, it looks like a project where sharing with other regions in Europe could be very useful. I can see behind the diagrams you shared, a lot of digitalization, data gathering has been, very well assessed and analyzed in order to prioritize. But indeed, you still have the need for these face-to-face meetings, which of course COVID has surely impacted. So Patricia, I hope there'll be some interesting questions for you in the Q&A session. So we move on, thank you again. So we move on to our next project and to a new country. We're now going to move to Italy. And we're going to have a quick presentation of 2 projects. Maybe Patricia could stop sharing the screen on the second computer. And I'm delighted to introduce Eugenio Morello. Eugenio is Associate Professor in Urban Design at the Politecnico di Milano, and he's also the Rector's Delegate for Environmental Sustainability. Eugenio, can I invite you to take the floor?
Yes.
Great, and to share your screen if that's possible. Thank you. You have about 6 minutes, just like the others.
Thank you so much. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. If you can go to presentation, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm presenting very quickly the experience we had within the project of sharing cities on co-designing deep energy retrofitting renovation solutions for multi-property buildings in Milan. And these experiences within this larger project of sharing cities, which is a European H2020 project that started in 2016. So the experience that I'm presenting today is about we started it at the end of 2016, and it was carried out in 2017, and then the retrofitting afterwards. So what I'm presenting here is a co-design pathway that was especially designed with this aim of sharing a wider perspective at the community and city scale, which is very much in line with what we have heard before. I'm just showing some of these images of co-design events and workshops that we carried out back in 2016 and 17, where we involved different multi-property buildings, different owners of apartments to come together at the municipality hall and co-design solutions together. These are some of the works that we have been conducted. So what are the main, in which sense is this approach different? We used really deep renovation. We intended it as a citywide challenge. The idea was to share common issues and values in order to achieve a carbon neutral city. Milan in particular, as we have seen from other cities as well, has a very old building stock. Built up areas are very old, and in order to achieve carbon neutrality, we need to share and to promote like, let's say, common policies. The city hence has a very important role as promoter and guarantor of these processes, and this is what happened. We launched a public call to engage buildings, and the city hall hosted also workshops in Milan. The idea was to establish multi-actors partnerships with the construction company, with university and the local government of people. I forgot to say very importantly at the beginning that this work has been carried out by Teikos Group as a main leader, the construction companies, together with Politecnico di Milano, with my group that developed together the co-design procedure, and then also the City of Milan, Legambiente, which is an environmental association in Milan, and Polyedra partner. And the idea here, we are convinced that in order to achieve better results and overall higher environmental quality, it's very important to share and involve people in the decision-making process. So this enabled to build trust within the participants of the process. How did we proceed? We made a public call for interest, the City of Milan, and we got more than 50 candidates that candidated to be part of this challenge. The area was identified in the southern part of Milan, and 20 buildings took part to this process. The idea was really to make sure that those buildings were not working alone, but they were engaged all together, or at least in groups of 4 to 5 buildings per workshop, and they share common values. So the idea was to go beyond the typical environment and atmosphere we get in building assembly, but to where we have mostly problems. But the idea was this is a common really challenge that we have to face together within the city. So these are some facts and numbers of the process. We had, again, 20 multi-property buildings involved, more than 160 people attendees to the workshop. We organized 9 workshops, actually 3 groups of 3 workshops, plus some what we call extra meetings at the buildings, in the buildings to involve even more people that could not attend these co-design focus groups. In parallel, we also offered within this process 20 energy audits and 40 design scenarios. We built 2 scenarios per building in order to evaluate different possibilities and opportunities and costs. And at the end of the process, we developed 20 schemes with specifications of work. As a result, we got deep renovation of 5 of those buildings. The idea was that there was a limited budget and a specific target of 21,000 square meters to be retrofitted, and we actually achieved the results even beyond what was our goal. Other results, of course, are the capacity building. The idea is still today to mainstream these deep renovation co-design processes in the routines, possibly of public actors, but also in construction companies. Teikos actually developed further this idea of co-design, and it's part of their usual practice. And moreover, we also developed citizen awareness as a of deep retrofitting as a community challenge. Just quickly to the process that we used, the co-design and energy process where the energy audit were two processes in parallel. So on one side, you see in the column on the right, we have our energy champions from the buildings that took part to these three main meetings and the fourth one. And of course, there was a shadowing process or a back office process, which took a lot of time and energy for the technicians, for the construction company, in order to collect data, provide this energy audit, and also build through co-design scenarios, or let's say retrofitting scenarios that emerged from this dialogue with people. At the beginning, we thought, well, retrofitting only requires one big solution, one idea, but listening to people, working with people, we discovered there is much more to tackle when it comes to energy retrofitting. It has to do with comfort, with well-being, with community, also services and needs that people have. So the occasion of retrofitting a building in terms of like improving energy performance is also the occasion to intervene on a building from an overall point of view, from an overall sustainability point of view, which also includes social aspects. So that's why we said that through this project, we basically accompany the energy audit with a sort of social audit to look at the practices, how people make use of energy, how they use energy in daily life. And this was very important to look also at observing practices and needs of people. And this, I hope we can then continue with this process also with the municipality of Milan. Just to conclude, this is a sort of a final scenarios that we put on the table in the third workshop, where we had two scenarios. People were commenting and deciding, taking this informed decisions with lot of rich information that we provided about technical solutions, costs in general, and also per apartment, the savings that people could have, the payback time of their investment, the CO2 savings, and of course the energy performance gap, which was the part of the incentive given by sharing cities to cover some of these costs. In general, we discovered, and concluding my intervention, that people are not so much interested. It's not so much an issue of money or let's say money to invest. It's more about the process, the complexity of the decision-making process, the transparency of the process, and having the city and the university as part of the process really enable to build trust in this work. Thank you. I conclude my intervention.
Eugenio, thank you so much. And I like those last words that you've used about building trust. And it's a lesson that within a co-design process, that really trustworthy and trusted partners can really make a key difference in going forward. So I have the pleasure now to introduce our next and last project. We're going to hear from Sofia Salardi, who is project manager in the European Projects and Fundraising Unit of the municipality of Mantova. And Sofia, I'm going to ask the organizers to share your presentation. So you say next slide to move forward. Okay, so if Patricia can share Sofia's presentation. And Sofia, the floor is yours for about 6 minutes. Thank you.
Sofia, you are mute.
I start sharing my screen.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Okay, good morning to everyone. I'm going to introduce the Innovate project that which the municipality of Mantova was part. It's a Horizon 2020 project that started in 2017. What I want to say really briefly is that this project is part of a long journey that started in 2013. The municipality set its goal to be carbon neutral, and so made a lot of actions in order to reach this goal. And this project was part of that. The project, and now going deep to this. Well, just to introduce the city, we are in the north of Italy, is a UNESCO city. So with all the problems connected to that about the limitations on buildings and on heritage and so on. The goal of the project was to develop tools to facilitate the implementation of renovations in condominiums. And the final goal was to develop a package of services as a one-stop shop. In the context of the project, we made two parallel actions. We work with pilot condominium in order to collect ideas from owners and from technicians in order to set up a one-stop shop service for the city. We work with a particular condominium, and we started in 2019 making a public call, as Milano said before, and Milano did, and we start collecting ideas from owners in order to define an intervention scheme that could be replicable in the future and with other with other buildings. Working with condominiums was on one hand a challenge, but also an opportunity, because there are many owners and so many ideas, different ideas, but there is also a lack of awareness, both of owners but also of building managers. And then we try to involve since the very beginning both owners and building managers, but also technicians and professional orders. And there, we saw that there were no standardized tools for the control and the monitoring of the performance of the buildings. So the journey started, as I said, in 2019 with a call for proposal. We then made a field service and energy diagnosis of the building, and in parallel to that, several meetings with owners, with professional orders, local professional orders, and also with the building managers associations. And we arrived in at the end of 2020 with the decision taken by the condominium to do renovation works. This was better than expected. And in January 2021, so when the project ended, actually the works began. Here there are some slides. I will not go into that with an idea of the data that was measured with the energy diagnosis. And then again, the energy diagnosis. Here you can see the data that were presented to owners before the renovation work started. So the advantages given by the energy refurbishment works to pass from one class to another, and the interventions that refer to the isolation, subportion, and some other interventions that are called, let's say, driving interventions, because they are connected to the Italian law that foresee a sort of, let's say, economic incentive to do refurbishment works. And again, here the condominium before and after. In parallel, as I said at the beginning, we work with the pilot condominium in order to collect ideas to produce a package of services and to implement a one-stop shop for the territory. The one-stop shop, the idea was to have a qualified reference point for citizens as a support in all phases to implement the deeper renovation works. So a support in the evaluation, design, in the access to economic incentives, execution and monitoring of interventions. The municipality was involved in that as a lead partner in order to be the actor that could promote these works and also to get trust from citizens. We involved since the beginning professional associations and local building companies to support citizens in having the correct informations and support in all the process. We made meetings with all these sectors, and we arrived to define a memorandum of understanding with association professional orders, but also, and again, better than expected, we succeeded in involve other municipalities surrounding the city of Mantova in order to get a share one-stop shop service for the whole territory. We then signed the memorandum of understanding last year, and we define the one-stop shop that is now called the Tavolo Bonus Edilizi service. That is a service that was born in order to promote the economic incentives given by the national government and also support the citizens. The service could be reached via website, but also there is a telematic service to guide and support the citizens in benefiting from the bonus and other opportunities. What we did, the different institutions coordinated, involved in the one-stop shop. So the different municipalities coordinated by the municipality of Mantova are work in order to define common procedures to respond to citizens and to standardize the procedures. And on the other hand, the associations and professional orders that receive requests from citizens were able to respond in a common way and to share questions with the municipality that could elaborate standard answer and then procedures. I hope to be able to stay in my time, and this is the end of my presentation. Thanks very much.
Yes, Sophia, you've done a great job. Thank you. And the Innovate project seems to me to just keep giving and giving. And that's a really great story to hear from Mantova about how impactful it has been to be engaged with that EU-funded program. So, ladies and gentlemen, I see that I don't have any questions that are coming in online, and as the timing is challenging, and as you expressed at the start, that financing and finding money is really a key challenge for renovation, and one of the main reasons why you might not renovate. I think, and I hope Housing Europe as organisers agree with me, we'll move on to hear about the financing aspects, because we have two very good presentations, one from Italy and one from Spain on financing. So I ask Cecilia Hugoli from TECOS to take the floor. Cecilia is an architect and an entrepreneur, and her company TECOS, that we've heard about already, is specialized in energy renovation of buildings and was the first in Italy to apply the handover of tax credit schemes. But she's also a coordinator of Renovate Italy, the Italian think tank on energy renovation, whom I know very well indeed. So Cecilia, over to you to share your screen and tell us about the super bonus experience.
Thank you very much, Adrian. So let's see. Okay. That's it. Okay, so good morning to everyone. I'll try very briefly to explain our experience in Italy with this new incentive that it's on place since October 2020. So we have also the result of the very first year. So the super bonus is a national incentive scheme for housing energy renovation. It covers 110% of all costs of deep energy renovation works. And this incentive is given to the householder as a tax credit. So this tax credit can be used in 3 different ways by the householders. And I think that this part is the more interesting one. So the householder can decide to use it as tax deduction in the 5 years after the work is finished. On the other hand, it can choose to monetize directly the tax credit by hand over it to a bank. In this case, he doesn't have to wait the year after the end of the work, but it can monetize it as far as the work is going on. So the regulation consider that when you arrive to the 1/3 of the whole work, you can already monetize 1/3 of your tax credit. The third option is to use this tax credit to pay directly the contractor. The contractor then can decide to use it by itself as a tax deduction in the next 5 years, or the contractor can decide to monetize it directly by handover to a bank. So the system is quite easy, I think, very easy to use. And what are the goals? Well, first, the idea is to overcome definitely the financial barrier to housing renovation for householders. I would like also to highlight that this incentive is easy to use also by low-income families, because even if a family is not a taxpayer because maybe the incomes are too low, anyway, it can have the tax deduction, and it can monetize it by handover to a bank or use it to pay the contractor. So also low-income family can do their work using directly this tax credit. I would like to highlight that this incentive is creating a lot of private investment before the public incentive is given, because let's say the public incentive starts the year after the works are finished, but in the year where the work we are doing, there are private investments by householders, by banks, by financial institutions to create these works. Okay. So, so this is a bit what I was explaining here. Now, in year 0, we have, or the state already has income from taxes because there is an economical activity created, but by this private investment, but it has not outcomes yet because they will come later on. Okay. So, what are the results of 1 year of this incentive? Well, we have at the end of September, so after 1 year, we had almost 46,000 buildings that are under renovation or already renovated. I highlight that the target in PN in our Recovery and Resilience Plan was 100,000. The overall investment at the end of September is 7,500 million euros. And the energy saving, which is 1,202 gigawatts, we are, well, first I have to underline that these energy savings are measured in the end of August, when the investment were 5,000 million. Okay, so we are almost online with what were the targets in the Recovery and Resilience Plan, and we reach 40% of the targets that was defined in the National Climate and Energy Plan, which were released at the end of 2019, so before this new incentive was tested. And these are this target is specific for residential for housing sector in the building stock. So, I mean, we can, of course, compare where we are today to where we were supposed to be at the end of 2021. We have calculated that the cost of the kilowatt hour saved with the eco-bonus scheme is 0.17 euros. So it's quite lower just to make a comparison with what the Italian incentive scheme for example, for renewable flats. So it's not so expensive. There are now different the first studies that are being published now to show the from the state point of view, of course, the economical balance of this measure, trying to say that really is a measure that can be not so exceptional as we have it now. And I think it's also interesting to understand what is happening now. So in this chart, we can see how the investments are increasing since the setting of the measure in October 2020. So we had very, very slow beginning, but because the design and it's quite complicated and also because the new incentive had set a different clarification of how to use it, that made it very difficult to use it in the very first month of course, there is a kind of setting, and also from the market side, the companies had to adapt their way to work in order to use this incentive. But we can see that then the investment increased quite quickly. Also, if it seems that we are arriving now at a point that can't grow more because of the lack of preparation of the construction sector, because the demand is increasing. The incentive is supposed to end in December 2022, so there is no time. But now in Italy, it's very difficult to find contractors that are available to start new works. It's impossible to find scaffolding, and insulation materials also are very well. We have kind of 5 or 6 months since the order to the delivery of the material. So really, I think this is a point also for other countries that with investment in energy renovation that we all have to do in the next month. Well, we started a bit, but maybe we started before, and we can really see that there is an issue also on the offer side. And well, we have to consider that these 7,000 million is kind of 5% of all investment in the construction industry in Italy in 2017. So we are really talking about a huge new opportunities. Okay, thank you for your attention. I think if there are any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And indeed, the Italian Superbonus scheme is constantly fascinating, and it's great to hear that it's been working. But our audience would be interested to see you also have problems with workforce and sourcing construction products. So moving again back to Spain, we're going to continue on the financing of energy renovation. And I'm now delighted to introduce Ignacio de la Puerta. Ignacio is an architect and director of the Territorial Planning and Urban Agenda of the Basque Government, and he's been part of Spain's renovation working group. Ignacio, it's over to you to talk to us about financing as our second last presentation. So about 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to share my presentation.
Yes, please. We can see it.
Okay. Let me Okay, so I'm going to talk about the mechanisms, financial mechanism we are trying to develop here in the Basque Country. Andoni has talked about the Opengela project, and I would like to point out that we are working not only on energy measures like passive insulation windows or active measures, but also on non-energy measures like accessibility, fire protection, and so on. This means that we are working with works that involve investment between 5,000 and 70,000 euros, depending on renovation depth size, and also in building typology. It is multifamily housing or individual housing. And also, this means that the owner must pay between 40 euros a month or 500 or more than 500 euros a month. So really financing is unusual. Of course, we have seen previously in the survey, this is a very really issue, a very difficult problem, a barrier, but it's not the only one. We have high initial investment average, about 40,000 euros dwelling in vulnerable areas, where it's very difficult to explain which are the benefits. There are a very, very lack critical of mass for projects. There are very difficult problems to provide long-term finance for those who lack of financial capacity and incapacity to stimulate demand. So, at the same time, we have seen that there are different programs, European programs, focused on the next generation funds that are focused not only in the renovation buildings, but also integral urban regeneration, trying to impact in other kind of social aspects. In this sense, financial and technical assistance are part of the solution and are the main barriers we are facing. Financing building renovation, as of today, banks provide financing with adequate loan terms between 3 or 5 years, with high interest rates and demanding guarantees that not everybody can hold with. So this translates into high monthly quotas, higher than salaries for most of people, especially in vulnerable neighborhoods, and not offering any kind of product or loans for vulnerable citizens. This means that there are a huge market failure, not adequate financing for everybody, environment policy failure in the residential sector if we don't are able to focus on these vulnerable areas, and social failure because green transition discriminates the most vulnerable citizens. So what happens with vulnerable citizens? When we are trying to buy by credit card, the nominal interest rate is almost about 26%. And when somebody is trying to buy a new mobile or something like that, the rate is about 20%. So what this means? So we are trying to develop this formula that previously Andoni has been talking about, that involves three main elements. It must be easy, with a strong support, technical support. It must be affordable for everybody. That means that we must be able to give loans and financial instruments for all people, and it must be fair. So the solution is trust to renovate, trustworthy. If we analyze this kind of bell, goes bell. We relate it to capital rent, household, and population. We can see three different parts, three different groups. On the right group, we have those that they own their own investment, their own incomes that they can go to the financial market in order to get a loan. On the other hand, on the left, we have those that they have several limits in order to get the quantity, the money enough to pay that kind of that is not with subsidy. This is a very strong small group that could be a problem for public administration. And in the middle of those groups, we have this kind of people that is almost in those vulnerable areas, that they are not in the situation that the public administration should take a special treatment, but when they go to the banks in order to get the loan, the risk, the committee of risk says that no, they are not able to get a loan. So we have a very strong problem with this kind of population. In order to this, we are trying to develop a scheme, a mechanism, a financial mechanism that we put in this graphic, the investment and the wage income. We are trying to give loans, subsidies for the community, the owners, in order to those multifamily buildings, where we are giving loans about the 40, between 40 or 50%. This is a loan that will be refundable in 10 years. We have other individual loans which are for free, which are linked to the incomes of the population, but we have all a part, the rest until getting the 100% that all owners must put on the table. So we are trying to develop a mechanism, social support, which is called Más Opengela, could be plus Opengela financing, that try to cover the most vulnerable people with this kind of special loans for 30 years. They could pay back this loan in their own capacity per month, per year, but always when they are trying to sell the house, they must pay back all the loan. We have another group for this that are in that past center group, that we are trying to develop financing for 50 years, trying to give them a kind of warranty in order to get the loan, and then the rest that they can achieve a loan in the financial market or with these financial entities. So, which are the benefits of these mechanisms? That covers up to 100% of the project cost. Is quick and easy request for processes, not linked to life insurance or similar other products. No cancellation fee. There are payment guidelines up to 50 years, and nominal interest rate is linked to the energy efficiency improvement ambition. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ignacio, for that great expose on what looks like a very flexible and well-considered financing scheme to support the most vulnerable. A real effort to leave nobody behind, which is what the European Commission wishes to do with the renovation wave strategy. It allows me to move on to our last presentation of the day, and I'm delighted to welcome Edouard Puig. Edouard is Head of Operations at GNE Finance and is coordinator of several H2020 projects in which GNE is involved. And Edouard, I believe you're going to present to us the EuroPACE model for financing. Over to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you very much. Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Perfectly. Thank you. Yes.
Very good. Actually, Ignacio already explained most of the things that I intended to explain, but I knew sort of in advance because we worked together in Opengela. So my purpose is to basically highlight a couple of things, particularly on the results of the EuroPACE project, which ended end of August, and some lessons learned that we could share with all of you, and that I think can be beneficial or instrumental for the deployment of the Next Generation EU funds. You may see actually a couple of coincidences in the content of my presentation with the one that Ignacio just did. So again, as Ignacio was explaining, very similar approach, a one-stop shop built on the principles of proximity. Actually, this one-stop shop was built in the premises of the City Hall to make sure that we could provide this message of trust from the local authorities, which is very important. Also, working closely with the public authorities, because in the end, this is a private-public partnership. We could also benefit from the leadership of the city, because the city knows exactly the challenges that the citizens and the building stock have, and therefore the program could address those specific needs. And at the same time, the administration, the local authorities could support with plenty of bureaucracy and administrative support. So it was clearly an example of a successful public-private partnership and focused on citizens. So as you saw from Ignacio's presentation, EuroPACE one-stop shop and program was built on the very same principles, which is basically generate trust from homeowners. Basically, as the Slido survey at the beginning was trying to explain, is to get trust from the homeowners so they open up their home for the projects to be able to be implemented. So there are three these pillars: technical assistance, affordable finance, and smart funding. Actually, you can see the coincidence in the image that Ignacio also used for the smart funding, addressing specifically for vulnerable groups. The EuroPACE was actually the cradle of the mass mechanism, what we call this de-risking mechanism, that we are now adapting to the Opengela program, which, as Ignacio was explaining, is much more focused on vulnerable groups. So same principles, building trust, working together with the public authorities and private players to make sure that we can bring the best out of both worlds to help homeowners. Some results, as the end of August, and 20 months out of 22 under pandemic conditions, the program was able to help 75 projects and reach out an investment deployment of slightly above 1 million euros. You will notice that most of the measures implemented were single measure, either windows, either insulation, either a heat pump. We did a survey, and basically, given these uncertain times, families were being cautious, and they just wanted to wait and see what was going to happen. Of course, they knew about the inflow of subsidies thanks to the recovery funds. So by the end of the project, most of the citizens and the homeowners that joined the program just wanted to try the program, try the support with one specific measure. And as they mentioned in the surveys, they intend to come back to us once the recovery funds, the NGO funds, are there to be actually captured. So very important again, based on the surveys we ran through or with the homeowners, is the focus on the citizen, and citizen as a consumer, not as a rational decision maker, but as an emotional decision maker. So therefore, rather than talking about energy efficiency or talking about financing, the key words to really get their attention is words such as comfort, well-being, health, because that's really what resonates with the needs of a homeowner. And finally, some lessons learned that I think can be useful for everyone now that we are all getting ready to capture and deploy recovery funds. Clearly, local authorities have a clear role to play as leaders of this effort, but basically also because they can bring a lot of trust to homeowners. It makes a huge difference when a private company goes and talks to homeowners, if they are backed up, or even some representative from the local authority is there to answer questions. The conversion ratio really is of another magnitude of a scale. So local authorities have a key role to play, and they need political support. They need the politicians to make sure that they help and provide the tools, resources, and the support the technicians from local authorities need to be able to deploy these sort of programs. That also requires new challenges, also new solutions. It's not always evident, but there are ways, like Opengela shows, like EuroPACE shows, there are technical civil servants with a lot of eagerness to do new things with the existing regulatory framework. So there's hope, so to speak, and there's possibilities to make it. That requires also give these technical people from the public authorities support from the political authorities. And again, the local authorities are there to play a key role, but they cannot do it alone. So they need companies and professionals to help them tackle this massive challenge. And again, as Ignacio explained very well, finance is not the solution, but part of the solution. We need to think in terms of integrated service. And again, customer-centric approach. So that I will pause because we are running out of time, and I'll be happy to expand or take any questions when Adrian, you think it's appropriate.
Edward, thank you so much for that, to bring the presentations to a close. Indeed, I've just been exchanging with the organizers, and we're going to run on for maybe 5 minutes because I see some questions have come in the chat box, and I would really like to pose them. The questions go to 3 of the speakers, and of course, the questioner states that these have been very interesting presentations, and this sharing of experience is really valuable. But the first question goes to Sophia, which is, Sophia, do you think that the project of Mantova city could be replicated in Albania, which of course is not at the moment part of the European Union? And is there maybe, it's a kind of sub-question, is there a willingness in Mantova to share the experience and help with other cities that might wish to follow your example? Sophia, maybe a short reaction.
Yes, for sure. It would be a pleasure to share with you, I think, the process, and then we could share maybe the link to the website just for you to have an idea both of the one-stop shop and of the process we made. And yeah, on the website there are all the documents we produce to select the condominium, and then the memorandum of understanding to define the one-stop shop. And I think this is the most valuable thing we could share. And if you need more information, we could be surely in touch for that.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm sure that it was Doris Andoni that asked the question, that she would be delighted to follow up on that. And for Cecilia, is it possible, do you think you had posted in the chat box the link to the legislation that covers the energy bonus scheme, the super bonus? Because, yeah, the excitement about that, I see you've done that just now, thank you, that the excitement around the super bonus is so great. But do you have a feeling, is it replicable in other countries? Do you know of other countries that have been trying to see if their legislation could cope with such a generous tax credit scheme?
Yes, I know, well, informally, of course, that there are other countries that are studying and having a look at what is happening. I really think that can be the answer because it's a financial scheme, in fact. And I think that, we are now collecting, in Italy, we are collecting a lot of data of Enea is the organization who has to collect all this data about investment, about energy savings related to the measures. And starting from this data, there are, I think, we could say if it is sustainable from an economical point of view or not. I think that the percentage, I mean, 110% is a lot. We should lower it down and saying that the government is paying 70%, 80, 60. But the process of the handover of the tax credit scheme, I think this could be perfectly replicated and is really, really interesting because it moves private investment and is really a win-win solution.
Yes, indeed, it is a very innovative financing approach for owners and very, very attractive. And the last question I see that's been posed in the chat box is for Ignacio. And the question is, who assesses the income of the applicant? Is it the bank? Is it the local authority? Are people, I suppose, the sub-question there is, are people willing to expose what their income is? Ignacio.
Oh, let me. Okay, yes, by this moment is the bank, the risk committee of the bank who is assessing the loans. But in our mechanism, the financial entity added to the program is who assess the application, and according with the government and municipality, we analyze if this application could be supported by the mechanism, the mass Opengela, or not.
Okay.
So it's a complex system.
And I think in this case, complexity then probably leads to the greater building of trust and the higher quality outcome. So it sounds like it's a very strong approach. Yeah. And so no questions in the chat box, but I do have a question for Patricia on the AGREE project. Patricia, because it's so hard to motivate private owners in multifamily homes, and I know that this is an issue in Southern Europe, we've heard that today, but I know also in the Central and Eastern European region, it's a large challenge. But my question really is, how much time is it taking to do the negotiation with the owners in a block to get to the threshold of agreement? Is it a few months? Is it a bit longer? Or can you say?
So we are in that precise moment. So I cannot say exactly how much it has been because it hasn't happened yet. But I have to say it is a very long process, and we also faced the pandemic in the middle. We also needed to wait for the new scheme that the Basque Government has just released in September, with a very interesting new set of subsidies for renovation. So we wanted to go to the people with the more clear information, the better, especially on the financial aspect. The agreements with the financial entities were already signed at the beginning of 2020, but of course with the pandemic, all that stopped and they have not been used, let's say, but we are hoping they will be used soon by these pilot sites. Also, what AGREE offered, and I think I didn't mention it, is the municipalities through the European project have paid for the previous technical projects. So now the owners can discuss and make the decisions with a more detailed information on what are the renovation and the measures needed, and how much is that going to cost, and how much of that can be subsidized. So I think this is a very important point, because making the decision of renovating without having certainty, or at least some certainty on how much this is really going to be, is very hard. So I think this very little investment from the local side, which has been 20,000 euros, which is not much for a municipality, can really help trigger those bigger investments. Especially when you have very similar buildings, you can do, let's say, one typology, and this is almost repeated. So it's quite cost effective to do these previous studies.
Okay, Patricia, thank you so much for that precision. I think I'll move to the conclusion section. I'm aware we're nearly 10 minutes over time, but I see the audience is staying with us. And to conclude today, I'm really impressed by how much we've seen public-private partnerships really working on the ground in Southern Europe. It looks like it's really a set of example projects and actual demonstration works in buildings that could be and should be replicated and shared across Europe. So I want to thank the organizers, Housing Europe, for putting the program together, for the tenacity of Andoni Hidalgo in chasing me to be moderator. And I wonder, would Julian like, in fact, to say a few closing words to the participants as the organizer?
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, thank you very much to all. That was indeed, I think, very stimulating to try to understand indeed the challenges in Southern Europe in terms of integrated renovation. But it's also very encouraging to see, I mean, the good practice and the very innovative way, particularly to finance the renovation of private homes. We know that in those countries, the home ownership sector is very strong. So we need to indeed adapt to the reality of those countries, and that was very excellent presentations. So we hope that when the European Commission will revise the different directives related to energy, that they will take into account the reality of those countries and find a flexible way to support what is already existing on the ground. And with Opengela, I mean, with the project Opengela, we are really looking at producing useful recommendations in the coming month for that purpose. So thanks again, Adrian, for your great work as a moderator, as usual, I would say, and happy to see you hopefully very soon face to face.
Me too. Thank you very much, Julian. And indeed, I see the panelists are putting on their cameras. That's a nice idea, because I would just like to thank you again for really wonderful content. And we will share the recording and I believe the presentations over our social media networks. And I would ask all of you to do so because we've gathered a really valuable overview of some very promising experiences that should be shared more widely. Okay, so with that, thank you again. Have a great afternoon and see you all, I hope, in person. Let's say within the next 12 months. Let's be optimistic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet all you.
Mm.